Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Third Impact in Anime podcast. This is Sully, and with me I have two returning guests. I have Salvatore, our resident Cutie Honey expert. You last heard him on one of our Pride Month episodes. Welcome back, Salvatore.
Thanks for having me again.
We have David, who we also had on one of our Pride Month episodes discussing his work dubbing LGBT anime.
Hello! What you must understand, Sully, is that everywhere Salvatore and I go, it's pride.
And last but certainly not least, we have our other special guest for this episode, the voice of Cutie Honey herself, Jessica Calvello.
And I am very prideful. Absolutely. It is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I was actually rewatching the dub last night with my boyfriend, and he said, it's kind of interesting that you're doing this show and it's going to be three gay men and Cutie Honey herself talking about a show that's so full of breasts.
The only
It's
thing
not
gayer
the audience
than
you would
three gay men
expect.
is three gay men and Cutie Honey.
Exactly. It is a beautiful, well, it's not a trifecta. Trifecta is three, right? So we're a quadrecta. No, I don't, never mind.
We're
I lost that.
we're a trifecta plus.
Yeah, there we go. We're a trifecta plus. I love it. Magical.
So while Cutie Honey, the 3-episode OVA series that we're talking about, came out originally in 2004 to tie in with the live-action film directed by Hideaki Anno, it only recently, in 2023, got an English dub that David directed and played a part in, and brought back Jessica. Jessica has played Cutie Honey. This will be your third time now. You played her originally in New Cutie Honey in the 90s, you came back for Universe, and now you're doing Cutie Honey.
Yes. It's been really cool to be able to reprise the role. Because you never know. I mean, things you're cast in something, you hope to stay in the role, but with every release of a different Cutie Honey, it's a different show. And so there certainly isn't an obligation for anyone to keep that original cast. So I've been very lucky that's been available to me. I hope for the best there, and yeah, I've been super lucky. So
Yeah, the rest of the casts have been different for the other releases. So I think what you're dealing with here, Sully, is we've got Cutie Honey Prime. Like in the Cutie Honey multiverse of madness, there is only one Cutie Honey, but everything else is negotiable.
Well, me and my ego like that, for sure. Yeah.
I think there's one version where John Krasinski plays your dad.
Yes.
And then you've got Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. It gets unmanageable. So Cutie Honey must remain constant.
That's and the MJs, right? We've had who was our, gosh, I'm not up enough on my Spider-Verses to be able to keep on with this joke. I was trying because I can't even remember the name of my charge. The young girl that Cutie Honey starts with an N.
Natsuko.
Natsuko, yeah. But okay, so Cutie Honey, and I know we're like not sorry, I'm not trying to like take over, but like there wasn't a Natsuko in New Cutie Honey, right? Because New Cutie Honey came out, they only did Natsuko like flashbacks, like comic panels, right?
Yeah, they in episode 5, I think. Well, there is a Natsuko in New Cutie Honey, but she's not the same Natsuko from like the other versions. Yeah, it's confusing, but when Honey meets her, she goes, "Oh, your name is also Natsuko," and then there's like a flashback to original Natsuko, which is very confusing for a lot of people who haven't seen the original manga or the anime, because New Cutie Honey was my introduction, and so I remember seeing that and being like, "Who the hell is that?"
Yeah, and yes, and like again, like I'm not trying to like take, because I'm sure you have a format here, Sullivan, but just on that topic, when that part came up, when we were dubbing that, the director of that show was a Cutie Honey fan, which is cool, because not every director is going to be a fan, not every person's going to be a fan of anime, not everyone's into it, but the director was. And I kid you not, we had to pause for a good 20 minutes so that it was explained to me who this girl was, the pain of Cutie Honey and her guilt of not being able to protect her. And like, I got the full story. I might as well have read the manga during my session because the director was like, we are not moving on until I explain. I was like, I'm here for it. That's great. So yeah, I do remember that she wasn't like in it and like the actual character was in it, but then that was that flashback. And like, I was like, who is that? And the director was like, oh, let me just geek out for a bit. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. So
take a seat by the fire, Jess.
Yeah. S'mores. Let's get some s'mores.
I'll spin you a tale.
That's what it was.
If it makes you feel any better, my partner is a very, very casual anime fan, and he went with me to a con that I was speaking at, and I picked up, the Discotek had a booth, and I picked up both New Cutie Honey and Cutie Honey, the new Blu-rays, and I bought them on separate days, and he's like, did you just get that? And I said, no, I bought New Cutie Honey, which is the old Cutie Honey. This is Cutie Honey. It's a newer one, but it's also old. It came out like 20 years ago. The newest one is Cutie Honey Universe. In his brain, I could see it short-circuiting. Like, in that very moment. He's like, wait, the new one's the old one?
It is so confusing. It really is. I feel their pain.
But you have, as we mentioned, you've played this role since New Cutie Honey in the 90s, and a story that I've always heard is that Go Nagai, the creator of Cutie Honey, chose you specifically. But what I didn't know that I found out from Salvatore when we were talking off mic earlier was that apparently he wanted Winona Ryder for Cutie Honey before he heard you at some point.
Yeah, so I was new, and now we know. Sorry. Sentai Filmworks originally was called AD Vision. That was like its first name. And then it became ADV Films. And so, yeah, back in 1998, it was 1998. So yeah, I'd been working for ADV Films, which is now Sentai Filmworks, for about 3 years. I think I started in 95. Wait, that's 2 years. And the director's like, hey, we've got this new title. We're super excited. We're actually working with the creator of the franchise of this character, of this story, Go Nagai. And his stipulation in letting us have the dub was that he gets to cast the lead. And I'm like, great. And he just sort of like casually says to me, you know, Mr. Nagai wanted Winona Ryder, but we're not SAG. We can't afford to bring Winona Ryder to us. We'd love to do that for him, but we can't. And then he was very emphatic. He's like, well, if I can't have Winona Ryder, which is who we wanted, and that's fair. Winona Ryder's, I'm a fan. She's amazing. She's always been amazing. I've been a fan of hers since the 90s. So I get it, you know? And he said, well, if I can't have her, then I get to choose the lead. And of course the studio was like, fine, we're great with that. So I know David can attest to this because, like, if that audition were open now, there'd be thousands. But back in the day, there were just 9 of us that were sort of in rotation working as like the strong female leads because the studio was still very new and anime wasn't being dubbed everywhere. ADV Films, aside from Ocean Studios in Canada, and I don't have the year that they started, but they also started in the 90s. ADV Films was the first. And so and before they got some actors in there, they were pulling the artists from next door, who like, they're like, literally like, I'm trying to do the cover art for this DVD. And they're like, well, we need you to come be Golden Boy. Come on. So that's how Doug Smith got that role. So there were not that many of us. So I think I still have the email because I think I printed, if I find it, I printed it out and it's in some anime folder, but it's the email stating, we sent, 9 of our voice actress auditions burned to CD and sent them to Mr. Nagai in Japan because we used to actually mail things because email couldn't handle a megabyte, right? This is 1997, 98. And and so long story short, which I'm incapable of doing, he cast me. And I was absolutely just because everyone's good. And listen, we'll get into this, but like, David as a director can also like everyone's good. It's just who in your ears is right for the role because everybody is good. So 9 of us, we're all fantastic. And for whatever reason, sonically, I don't know, I hit whatever he needed to hear for Cutie Honey, and yeah, he cast me, and it really is my most honored feat in this whole crazy industry was him picking me.
You mentioned the sort of like multiverse thing, and when Cutie Honey came out, they did an audio CD that was all 4 actresses who had played Honey up to that point. And really, in English, it's only you and the actress they got to dub the live action film. So you really are basically both because Go Nagai chose you and because you are the consistent actress to play Cutie Honey in all of these different iterations. You are the official English voice of this character.
I think there's one more, Sully. I think there's one more Cutie Honey dub out there, though.
That's going to be a Salvatore question. Is there a third English dub that there was a third Honey? Because it's Jessica, and I think her name was Carrie, who did the live action film when that was dubbed here. And is there a third one, Salvatore?
The only thing I can think of is that, and this is, of course, only I would know this. in Kekko Kamen, in the the 4th episode, the last episode, one of the students is obviously Honey. Because Go Nagai series, we'll probably get into this later, they like to reuse a lot of characters. They do a star system, if you watch Devilman, you might see Sayaka from Mazinger Z in the background. They do that sort of thing, and they do it a lot in Cutie Honey series. But in Kekko Kamen, Honey does show up for a 2-second scene, and they did have a different actress play her. I don't know if, Jessica, you were still around at the time, because there was a time where you weren't dubbing with ADV, or if they just didn't care about that kind of continuity back then, because I feel now they really try to get the actors back for roles. But that's the only thing I can think of is that's probably the only time I remember another actress playing Honey, but it was a one-off thing. It arguably wasn't even Honey. It was just a character that looked like Honey.
That's really
legally
cool,
distinct.
Then
Honey.
It's even more of an honor. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of that sort of thing happened in Cutie Honey too. A lot of returning characters. It's kind of a parade of old Go Nagai properties through there.
That's one thing I want to ask David is there are people, so as I mentioned before, the OVA series was created after the live action film as sort of a tie-in material, and you brought back people from the dub of the live action film. So Wayne Grayson, who is Seiji in this, was also the dub for the live action movie. You have Mike Pollock doing Tokimura. You have Erica Schroeder as Scarlet Claw. Did you specifically go for people who had done that movie, or was it serendipity that they already were kind of in the fold?
Well, the answer is those people were sought out definitely with great purpose. The answer to the first part of the question was, it's not me who did that. I would love to take credit for all of the work that it took to get a hold of all those people and to compile those lists, but credit for that belongs to Marissa Lenti. And I think they had someone else assisting them with that. But, Sound Cadence Studios was where we did this dub. And Sound Cadence, those kids, they're kids to me. I'm 180 years old. So, but the kids who run Sound Cadence are they're my anime phone a friend forever. They know everything. They know the deepest, darkest parts of anime. So they are extremely knowledgeable, and they take great delight in doing that. When they spot a returning role like that, it's kind of a practice of the studio to go and seek out people. And Marissa's gotten a hold of actors who haven't been in front of a microphone for years, or they moved off to Timbuktu or something. She's found some real gems. But all of those sort of casting references were very purposeful. But it was Marissa Lenti who made all that happen. I cast a couple of the roles. I had some selections to make and I had a few roles to cast. For example, Natsuko, I was responsible for casting that role because this version of Natsuko didn't exist, in any other iteration. So stuff like that. It was like I was able to participate on that level, but no, most of that work was done by Marissa and possibly team, and Marissa deserves all the credit. That was like a deep dive into anime archaeology.
When it comes to work, so as we mentioned, this originally was animated in 2004, so it's a 20-year-old show. Do you ever approach doing something that kind of is, for lack of a better term, an archival piece, compared to doing something that came out relatively recently, like within 2 or 3 years of when you're dubbing it? Do you have a different approach for doing something that's older, or is it the same as anything else?
Well, there are certainly situations wherein I might alter my approach as a director with a more archival show or a show that's of a certain time. I don't feel like that was really necessary with Cutie Honey. It certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't on my mind, because the beauty of that story is it kind of lives in a timeless place. Like, what year is it? Who knows? There are flip phones, but there are hover cars. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of everything in the show is either consistent or everything in the show is anachronistic. And either way, you can approach it, as its own title, really, as its own entity, I should say. And the same was true of Cutie Honey Universe. I mean, it was I think if you were talking about a show or a title where the time, the specific year or something were very specific, or if certain references existed in it that were particular to a certain period of time or something like that, then an approach like that might work. But I think, and every director is going to think of and approach things differently. But for me, I would find, like, if I were working, okay, this show was done in 2005. So what were all the cultural references of 2005? I would find that a great hindrance, unless it were something that were there to actually serve and feed the story. And I think in Cutie Honey, the whole thing is kind of timeless. So you can kind of do whatever you can imagine with it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back even further than the dubbing process, Salvatore, you've worked very extensively. You've been a fan of Cutie Honey for 2 decades now, and you've kind of become the unofficial archivist of everything Honey, at least here in the Anglosphere. Can you tell us how you got started doing stuff with Discotek, specifically with the Honey programming, basically? Because you've worked on the release for the original series, you've worked on Universe, you've worked on this, you worked on New Cutie Honey. You've kind of had your finger in every Honey thing so far.
Yeah, no, I reached out to Discotek, I think at some point in 2013, 2014, after the original series came out. I actually didn't have anything to do with the original series release. I wish I did, but I didn't think to reach out to them or anything, because back then I was a fan. I didn't really know anything about subtitling or whatever. I didn't think that I would be able to have a voice in the industry, I guess. The first thing that I worked on was Devilman and Mazinger Z. They were subtitle-only releases. Basically, I did quality checks and subtitle editing. Devilman was probably the most involved project for me, just because at the time I had a friend of mine, Jacob Kuhn. Him and I worked together to just revise the subtitles, spell check, make sure translations were not too Speed Racer not too Babblefish and then just tweaking a few things. A small example, in the subtitles originally, Akira was thought to be the cousin of McKee, who's the love interest, and I'm that's kind of weird, but I guess it's a Go Nagai show, so I guess it makes sense that his girlfriend would be his cousin. And then I remember looking through, I think it was the Devilman Roman album, and they specify that they are not related, that Akira's father is a family friend to the Makimura family. So we would do things like that. I guess, I guess it could be considered going the extra mile. But New Cutie Honey was the first Honey release that I did. And I remember when I started getting involved with Discotek, I was like, are you guys gonna release Honey stuff? You know, like there's a bunch of unlicensed stuff out there. There's new Cutie Honey, which is like in licensing limbo because I think at the time Sentai didn't have the rights anymore. And it was funny. Nowadays I like work with like Justin and David and Brandy from Media OCD. Back then I used to communicate with the head of Discotek, and he was like very funny because like he would respond to emails and he'd be like, yeah, you know, I went to Japan. It was really cool. I couldn't find a lot. Oh, and I licensed a new Cutie Honey. And like he would like always say it so casually, big. Oh my God, you know. So yeah, and with the new Cutie Honey with the Blu-ray release, I updated the subtitles. There was like a few like names that weren't like translated correctly before. Like there's a singer in the series who ADV they translated the name as Saline, but it actually should be Siren. Like little things like that. And then I forgot what other releases we worked on. Cutie Honey the Live, I think I just helped with like the credits with that. And then Cutie Honey was like the big one. And this is funny, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Discotek has been trying to get Cutie Honey forever. Like for the longest time, they've been trying to license Cutie Honey. That was the one they really, really wanted. They're like, we really want Cutie Honey. We keep on like asking about it. And there was some weird licensing issue with it. I forgot what it was. Justin told me, I can't remember. I think it was one of those things where like all the companies involved were just like, you have to ask this person. No, ask this person. No, this person.
Oh.
Yeah.
Finally, they got it straightened out. And I remember Justin telling me, he was like, okay, we're releasing Cutie Honey. We're going to dub it. And the first thing I said was, you need to bring Jessica back. You need to bring Jessica back as Honey. And this is right after Universe came out. But I was like, yeah, and I was fully prepared to be the most annoying person on earth if they got anybody else to play Honey. Like, you have no idea. Just because
Salvatore, that's how you got to get things done in this business.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No, and I didn't have to like fight for it or anything. But like right away, that was the first thing I said. I'm like, if you're gonna dub it, you need to bring Jessica back.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you for all your work.
No, I appreciate it. David told me the same thing. You know, I was pleasantly surprised for Universe when David contacted me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so grateful because there is no contract signed that I get to be, you know, as actors, we are conduits. We have no rights. We don't own anything. We are just the voice. And so the fact that people, you know, fight for me, and I say that as, you know, I say that as calmly, not fight, but just say like, hey, like this person originated the role. And, you know, I think being cast by the creators says a lot there. But still, it doesn't matter. You know, would I be cast as Honey if Honey had never been done before? I don't know. There's so many of us now, right? So I really appreciate that.
I'll tell you, Jess, we're just soldiers in a battle. That's the universe telling the rest of the universe what the universe wants. Because like when Cutie Honey Universe came up, that cast was entirely my call. Like I had no oversight on that. If I had decided to cast another Cutie Honey, they would have asked no questions about that. They weren't really invested in the history of the title at the time. But like, the reason that you are Cutie Honey is because the very special, unique thing that you have that you bring to Cutie Honey is unrepeatable. Like it serves that character so perfectly. Like it would, I don't know. I mean, if I heard blind auditions for Cutie Honey today, I don't know, maybe I would be obsessed with Winona Ryder or something, but I don't think there would be any denying what you bring to the role. It's just like, it's absolutely unique and it's baked in. It's like your performance understands that character. It's not you asserting a performance over a character. It's your performance comprehends and beautifully reflects the very essence of that character. And I think anyone with 2 cents in their head would recognize that on a brief listen.
My God, thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Hopefully, you know, you don't get too smothered by the flattery and compliments here, Jessica. But you know, each series of Honey is very different, and Honey herself is like slightly different in each version. And the thing that I really appreciate, especially after like, you know, after all these dubs have come out, is that you play Honey according to how she is in each series. You know, because I remember hearing you in Universe, and of course you're still spectacular, and I'm like, but she understands the character, that this Honey is different from new Honey, and it was the same in Cutie Honey. Like, you definitely played her, you know, and and Universe were dubbed close together, like it was probably about like three or 4 years, you know, as opposed to like new and Universe. And of course you have it every time, but you do play it like slightly different. And I just, I mean, I love that. And I mentioned this in another podcast, but there's this one moment, and I don't even know if you meant to do this or not, but Honey's going through her different forms, like, you know, like, oh, sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that. And you say that you go, oh, sometimes I'm a goofy assistant director, but the way that you say goofy, you kind of laugh when you say it. And I'm like, oh my God, she's so brilliant. I remember hearing that. I like, and I was just getting the audio because they gave me the audio, like, I guess before they finalized everything. And I remember that one line, I was like, oh my God, genius. I was like, this is why she has to be Cutie Honey forever.
Thank you. You know, I'm going to like, yes, like those little nuances, right? Like, I know what you're talking about, and it is purposeful because she is different every time. Like, David and I had a discussion about this. I remember this. The animation was different for Cutie Honey Universe. And I don't know if you remember this, David, but we went to this Alamo Draft House, various ones in Texas, used to have these anime showings every month. I think there's one in San Antonio, there was one in Houston, and thanks pandemic, because it killed all that. Thanks pandemic. But
they're back. Somebody bought Alamo. Somebody bought Alamo and saved it.
Well, they're not bringing back the anime at the Alamo then.
Oh, how ironic.
I'm pretty sure it was Sony that bought them too.
The dramatic irony. But we had a big one for Cutie Honey Universe. I mean, like, not only David and I, but like the whole cast of these fantastic voice actresses. Oh my God. Oh, just a powerful line, right? Like, you just, like, we were all there, and we were all just excited, and I was excited, and I got my favorite question, which I knew would be my favorite question, and I was waiting for this question, and I stammered, and David actually, I got like flustered to try to answer it, because someone directly asked, did you see a difference in between new Cutie Honey, which, you know, recorded back in 1998, and Cutie Universe, like, just in term, and this is before Cutie Honey, right? So this is these two so far that I've done. You know, what were the differences? What did you feel? And I was like, they're two totally different honeys. The animation alone, like, and the way that I can sum it up, because I've thought a lot about this, because I've been asked this in other times. New Cutie Honey had more heart. And I don't mean to say Cutie Honey Universe didn't have heart. That's not what I'm saying. This is not a slam on either one of them. I'm just saying, like, new Cutie Honey, there was a bit more of an emotional depth, if you will, to Honey. I got teary-eyed in some of that show. None of it was really tongue-in-cheek. I mean, yes, Don Bay, the forever grandpa pervert. Yes, of course. There's going to be the ridiculous, I'll follow that anywhere. You know, there's all that. Yes, Choquet is adorable. You know, all of that. But it was so, like, stylized and so classic, right? Even it's new Cutie Honey, which is, again, the opposite land, but it was so stylized. And then Cutie Honey Universe was a little bit more light and fun. And that's not to say that new Cutie Honey wasn't fun. That's not what I'm saying. But just more, I don't know, bright. Even the tone of the outfit was brighter. What was that?
Yeah, it was a simpler character design. I mean, and I think the simpler character design translates to the art as well as the performances. You know, it's like you've got the elements of the characters in Cutie Honey Universe are clearer to the viewer, just because it's rooted more in you know, like a younger style of animation.
Yep.
You know, a style of animation that's geared toward younger audiences. You know, it's certainly, you know, the new Cutie Honey, like, in a way, took itself really seriously. Like there were moments where it was taking itself really, and not to its detriment, but you know, that the level of art, the style of art, and that is, you know, hand drawn back in those days.
Yeah.
Just the attention paid to the detail of those characters. You can see it in the art and you can read it in the characters. And I think that the same is true of Cutie Honey Universe. You know, the style of art is kind of reflective of the softer edges of the characters. And I think, again, same true again in Cutie Honey, which was just sort of like off the chain goofball, you know?
Yeah. We get it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Sally. I can, you know, Jessica is giving you a deep dive into the brain of an actor, but I can sum it up for you real well. There's a thing about Jessica that makes her the perfect Cutie Honey. Just like, it's pretty much objective. You know what I mean? Salvatore knew it. Go Nagai knew it. I knew it. You know what I mean? The audience doesn't have to know it because they've barely heard anybody else do it. So they don't have to worry about that. And you know, and being true to a character is an example of how of Jessica's like special affinity for the essence of what Cutie Honey is. But Jessica is on top of that an incredibly gifted actor. And an incredibly gifted actor is going to absorb the elements of the stage they're on, and they're going to reflect it instinctively because they have developed the skills to be able to do that. I mean, it's like if you're a stage actor, you're going to behave differently if you're in a David Mamet play than you would if you're in a Neil Simon play. You know what I mean? And if you're an accomplished actor, the differences in the elements that inform your performance are going to be readily apparent to you, as they are to Jessica, because Jessica's been recording anime dubs since anime dubs were recorded. So like, there's years of skill to tell you. And like, you know, the actors who've been doing it a while can get right in front of the screen, see the video, see the art style, see the movement of the characters, you know, with the slightest visual context clues. They're going to be able to figure out exactly the right pitch for that performance instinctively. And if they don't automatically, that's what the directors are for. We can nudge, we can move, we can bump. But yeah, that's just a fine actor doing an excellent job of some damn fine acting.
You know, I didn't know this interview was going to be like, you know, you guys like
Jessica Calvello, this is your life.
Oh, this is awesome to hear. You know, because like the other part of it is, David, you do everything. You write, you direct, you act. You release it, right? It's art and we don't own it. Yeah. And so I do the voice and it's out there into the world and I don't have a claim on it anymore. I mean, it's out there. And my one thing that I can hope for was I effective. Not just good. Everybody is good. I cannot stress that enough. The voice pool now, everybody is good. So it's not just, that's a given, right? I mean, we're all good. We really are. It's great. I couldn't imagine trying to cast something these days with the voice pool that's out there. But was I effective? Did I sound like I was phoning it in? Because there's that too. Not me, but I've heard, and not even necessarily in the anime world, just like you're watching I don't know, a commercial. It can be anything. It's like, wow, that person really doesn't sound like, or maybe they weren't directed or whatever. We're all a critic. But I'm just saying, like, what, you know, was I effective? Did I make sense? You know, was that exertion that I did, was that too big? Was that too small? Was that effective? And that's really effective is really the operative word for me. Cause like I said, good's going to be there. You know, emotion's going to be there. That's all there. But was I effective? And effectiveness, when it comes to portraying a character, to me, is what sets it apart from just someone who's just really, really good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's, did I serve the story?
Yeah.
It's like, did what I did, is what I'm doing serving this story in the way that the story hopes and needs to be served? That's the goal of an actor. To tell the story according to its own rules. You know, there are, and I'm only going to depart with you there, Jessica, on one thing. You're right. There's a tremendous amount of talent out there. Talent is no replacement for skill. Right. And when you get an actor in there who's been doing it, like who has all that ability to just instinctively understand how to match a set of lips, to instinctively understand how to cadence a read so that it arcs you into the read that follows you and arcs out of the read that precedes you. And sometimes you don't even have that read to respond to. You know, there are skills that get developed over a long period of time, and you hear it in actors who've been, you know, doing it. Like, you know, I mean, they're all the ladies I can think of. You know, Jessica's been in there from the beginning, and she is pure Jedi. You know, Monica Rial, Jamie Markey, Lucy Christian, Alexis Tipton.
Yes.
You know, these are actors who can just, like, all you really have to do as a director is just give them the copy, let them look at the video, and stay the hell out of their way.
Wow.
You know, and newer actors, there are newer actors who are incredibly talented, but this business of ADR acting is its own thing. Yeah. And yeah, you're best served to have developed your acting skills elsewhere, as I know I did, as I know Jessica did. But you know, once you get into it, it exercises its own set of muscles, and muscles get bigger and stronger with repeated use, right? So, like, things that you have to guide a young and very talented but also inexperienced actor through, things you kind of have to help navigate them, you know, through, you generally don't have to lend that assistance. So the benefit of that is with the more skilled actors, you know, the time you have in the studio is spent getting, like, you know, there was a lot of Jess and I going back at Jess's behest, like, you know, I think I got a better one. And like, that's as a director, that's my favorite thing to hear. You know, on that one line that we did 2 hours ago, I think I have a better one. I'm like, we'll go back. I'll get it. I'll never say no to an actor who tells me they have a better one. And the more technical experience and facility that you have for the technical end of acting in this business, the more time you have in the studio to do things like that, because the clock is ticking. And when it reaches zero, you're done for the day. There's no staying late. There's no, you know what I mean? The clock is very rigid in a recording studio atmosphere, because you probably got another session starting in 5 minutes. So, you know, or there's another session in that studio that's got to happen in 5 minutes or whatever. Time is money in a recording studio in a very real way. So the more practiced you are, the more skilled you are, the more freedom everyone has in that session to play. And that's what we're there to do ultimately, you know? So, you know, I don't mean to say anything disparaging about the incredible loads of new talent we have coming up. And it is extraordinary. And I love to utilize new talent in everything I direct. I try to find a few places to really feature some new and upcoming artists that maybe audiences don't know that well yet. But, you know, in the same show, I am very happy to use actors who are as talented and also as experienced as Jessica is. Because it just gives you so much, you know, like, you know, I mean, how sensitive comedy is, Sully. Just the tiniest twist on a small syllable of a word is the difference between a big laugh and no laugh. You know? So the more time you have to treat that stuff, the better it is in the end.
when you're acting, there's kind of these sort of levels in that if you're doing a character that no one has ever done before, let's say you're doing a stage show, you have a lot more creative freedom. You're kind of working with the writer or the director to kind of really make this character come alive. And when you do a character that has been done before, you're always going to kind of be negotiating with that prior performance. And then when you're dubbing something, you're both doing a character that has already been done before, but has been done in another language, in another cultural context, and then also you're having to literally act against the sort of performance of the animation. You can't do pauses or holds or laugh lines the same way you would if you had that complete total control, because you're locked into the lip flaps and the timing of the animation. And my question for Jessica is, how do you do that sort of character work when you have all of these sort of limitations on your sort of acting in the time limit, the lip flaps, working with a different culture and context? Like, how do you do that sort of work when you have all of these sort of factors working kind of against you?
That's such a great question. And honestly, I've thought about that a lot over the years. You know, I'm an improver, and my goodness, do I love to be allowed to cut loose and, you know, definitely within the confines of the character. You know, I'm not even saying that I would go necessarily nuts. And there used to be a little bit more time back in the day. We used to do blooper reels. There's quite a few early dubs that I'm a part of where they used to put the bloopers actually on the DVD, and so we had time to kind of mess around and say some stuff and ad lib and try to sync it just for our own enjoyment. But yeah, it's uh sometimes it sucks, you know, like not really, you know, I could like if I could just add, you know, one more thing, or, you know, sorry, it's running a few flaps too long, we got to take out a couple of words, and then it changes the sentence, it changes what you're saying, and that changes your performance a bit. It's not always easy. I think it was a little bit easier back in the day when we did have some artistic freedom. A lot of the shows I do now are very much like, no, if you add in an extra breath, this has to go through approval of 17 producers, 14 different adapters. We've got to talk to the writer. I'm obviously exaggerating, but you know, and then the director needs to make a note out to the side. We put a breath in. I'm exaggerating, but I mean, but no, I'm also not. I'm only 13% kidding. Like you really don't add in things as much. You know, you don't just add and take away. And I'm not talking about every title, and David could probably go into that. But I know like some of the bigger like corporate, that's not the word I meant to use. I'm gonna hydrate. Not corporate, but just titles where it's very much involved as to what you're adding or wanting to remove, and having to get approval for that. I've recorded a lot of alternative lines where it's like, hey, I'm just in the session asking the director, can we try this? And the director says, listen, I love that. Not in the script. Let's put it on an alt track. And because I've worked with very few directors who tell me no, kind of like in line with what David was saying a second ago. It's like actor has a different read, a better read. I'm not going to tell them no. And if I have something that I do want to ad lib a bit, and sometimes it might just come out like I just deviate and I just say something a little bit different, and the director goes, oh my God, I love that. I don't think I can use it, but I'm going to put it on the alt track and I'm going to submit it. But we got to record the line as is. So there's, I'm not going to say there's ways around it. There's no, like, we're not like finagling, like it's not like we're going around it, but you know, a good director is going to want to let you play if you want to play. And then back in the day, just to, you know, really answer your question, back in the day, we had more freedom. We would rewrite. I mean, they're not so much a new Cutie Honey. I remember that was we were pretty strict on that because Mr. Nagai was involved, and there's, you know, that was that. But other shows, oh my goodness, some of my earlier roles, I mean, just off the chart ad-libbing and being able to get away with that. But yes, there is always a certain kind of confinement because the work is there and you are adding to it. The animation is there, the lip flaps are there. There is no, let's tell the animator to give me 3 more flaps so I can make this joke. No. And that's skill too, really. How many times have I been told we're half a flap short, and I go, I got it. I can fix it. And I know exactly which word to elongate. or just what to stress a little bit longer to cover that, like, and that is that, I will say, that is some skill, because that is not easy, but it just takes a second. Or someone saying, you're sorry, you're a whole flap over. I got it. Let me just, or the engineer can probably compress a bit, but if you've been doing it for a minute, you can probably see where you can shorten, how you set a certain line, or just not take as much time with it. And then
it's just about like you run into a little obstacle in the line, and because you've been doing it for a really long time, you've run into that obstacle before, and you've come up with 3 or 4 different ways to navigate it, so you can pull from those previous. So it's just this is the benefit of experience,
Yeah.
And we've got those parameters, like the things that you're describing as obstacles, Sully, I think of as parameters. And there are always going to be parameters. To me, it's more of a musical endeavor. The idea of a line, I also don't believe that script is sacrosanct.
I don't know what that word means.
I think I have. It's like that script is sacred. That script is must not be touched by human hands. In this process of dubbing, there are so many things that can dictate whether or not a line is going to work. And part of that, it starts with, you've got a writer who has a certain sense of time, who has a certain way of speaking, and is going to write in accordance with that. And then you put it into an actor's hand, and that actor's hand, that actor is going to have a very different sort of way of speaking, and they may have different ideas about which words have more power in a sentence, and it just may be endemic to the way they speak. So the script, unless you want to force an actor to be in a really uncomfortable place, which is the most likely effect of that, is that you're going to disconnect them from their own performance, right? The best thing to do is alter the line to fit the actor's instinct whenever possible. And that doesn't mean changing the entire line and altering its entire meaning. It means finding a clever way to arrange the words so that they communicate the idea that's meant to be communicated. And here, I think, is the most important part, that they elicit the emotional response they're intended to elicit, which is why, like in dubs, in most of the dubs I've worked on, particularly if they're comedic, and this is the case in Universe as well as Cutie, like, and many other titles. Like, when it comes to making jokes, when it comes to a line that's supposed to elicit a laugh, sometimes the Japanese translation will work, and sometimes it just won't. So you have to find a way to serve the story, serve the character, and also elicit that emotional response, earn that emotional response. So lines can change. It does get harder when you have really big titles, or you have situations where, like, you have the client who would be the owner of the license is like in the session, and they will find themselves very married to or can sometimes find themselves very married to what was originally there. Sometimes you have to follow along with them when that happens. And sometimes you're able to show them objectively how this is going to get the result they want, more so than the exact phrasing of that line is going to get the result you want. But it is different from client to client. But we still, to this day, we still have a lot of room to play on certain titles. And
in a David Wald dub, we have room to play, but not every director is that way with their act. Like, let me just talk about David Wald for a second. David, Dave is one of my favorite directors for exactly what he's describing, where he cares about the performance, and that is what is the most important thing to him. And he lets his actors feel like instinctively do what they want to do. He, like, honestly, David's a director, but you're more of a guide, because David guides. He doesn't tell me yes or no, really. And he doesn't dictate what I do or don't do. He's like, you're the actor, I trust you, go. And then he might be like, all right, that was great. What about this? He suggests and he guides. And that is my favorite kind of a director. Because what David is describing is my favorite way to work. It is, he's talking about caring about the performance. And I looked up the word sacrosanct. And I understand why now that I know what it means, I understand why he used that word. And it's a good word. And that, yes, it makes so much sense. Because David listen, I remember you giving me a call years ago and you were going on and on about this part that you were interested in me auditioning for. And it was in
Hitarizume, My Hero. Yeah.
Yes. And
Drunk Mom.
Yes. And David and I spoke for like 40 minutes about this role. And it was all about the kind of acting that he wanted to bring to it. And we didn't talk about voice. Like David talks about, this is why you're one of my favorite directors. He talks about acting. And he was like, I need this kind of an actor. I need this kind of ability. And it's funny, and this is not bad or good, but I was thinking this was like the lead or something. Cause David was like, and it was a very valuable role, but certainly that anime is the two, it's Boys in Love. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are our beautiful main characters. But the role that David wanted me to play was just as important, which is why he's like, I need to call you. Are you available? And gave me that conversation. That is my favorite thing to do. That is like the rehearsal, which there's no rehearsal for anime, but like there's expectation laid out. This is what I'm after. Are you up for it? And then by the time I'm in the studio, all we do is play. It's not even really, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the line with me. I talk about you behind your back, and this is exactly what I say.
How dare you?
How dare I tell the truth about how wonderful you are? No, I do. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. And because yes, it's hard work. Yes, it's like exhausting. I'll record for 4 hours and I'm like, well, I'm now dead. It doesn't matter what the show is. Obviously there's more that exert more than others, but still it's voice acting to me. It's acting. It's a lot, but it's not work in that, because David makes it very clear what he's after. And then he just lets you go. And that's my favorite freaking way to work. Seriously. So I'm sorry. I know I interrupted you, but I was like, I need to say this.
I'll allow it. Yeah, no, it's the difference between thinking of those elements that you're handed in video and in the Japanese audio track or in the script you're provided. Instead of thinking of those things as obstacles you have to surmount, think of them as parameters within which to play. And as long as you're playing the game, then you're okay.
I will say that, Jessica, you mentioned earlier dubs that you've done. I think the first role I heard you in was not Honey. It was you playing Excel in Excel Saga. Talk about a show that, literally suffering for your art. Your vocal cords were sacrificed on the altar of comedy for that.
Pretty much decapitated me there. Yeah, definitely. That was a role. Yes.
I'm almost positive that was also my first exposure to you as an actor, Jessica. I used to love Excel Saga. I still do, but like when I was a kid, I was like obsessed. This is very cringy, and I feel comfortable enough to admit this. I used to imitate Excel's little, like, she would go, like, and I used to do that in school. I was very, very cringy.
The one where she breaks out into opera, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like there's like Il Palazzo will be like explaining whatever the hell they're about to do, and then she's just kind of twirling around making noises.
Okay, that was improv. Can I tell you something? I've got to geek out. Okay, literally, and I still have my first script. I still have it because we used to use this now obsolete material that's called paper. We used to use that thing called paper, which doesn't exist anymore.
But the trees, Jessica, the trees.
I know, darling. It's true.
Why does anyone think of the trees?
That part in the script, there was nothing in English. And I talked to the director and I'm like, what is this? And he's like, oh yeah, they couldn't translate Kotono Mitsuishi, who's the OG Excel. They couldn't translate her. And I was like, well, what do you mean they couldn't? He's like, well, she's not really speaking any language. She's just she's just doing things. And I said, well, what do you want? Like, what do you, because it goes on for like, it's almost a minute of ridiculousness. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, oh, I don't know, just do whatever. So that's what, like, I was like, oh, well, hey, if you're gonna let me ad lib. And that shit was just, that was just me being crazy, because it literally said unintelligible. I have to pull out my script. I can't, it's in a box somewhere, but it was like unintelligible, unable to be translated, do whatever. And I was like, this is my favorite line of all time. And I literally just did whatever. And we finished it, and it was a one take. And he's like, that'll do. And I'm like, all right, well, it's great.
I want that note in every script I ever work on forever.
I know.
Please. Please.
Right? Do whatever. Unintelligible, unable to be translated, do whatever. Like, okay. Mm-hmm. Salvatore, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what you were saying. I just, that you brought up such a great memory from that show. But yeah, but I'm so sorry. What were you saying?
No, I honestly forgot to. I guess I was just talking about how because that was my first exposure to you as an actor, was Excel. I think it was Excel Saga, because I used to also really like Dirty Pair. And again, I still like Dirty Pair. I'm looking forward to the new dub that's coming out. But I think Excel was like my introduction to you, which is insane. And I remember, it corrects me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading an interview, and it was, I know there was like a few things that happened in Excel Saga, and you had to step away from the role. But I remember I think you were quoted as saying, Excel kicked my ass. And that, I'll always think about that.
Yeah, it did. It did. It really did. I would have loved to finish the role. And true story, I sometimes have dreams about it, where like I'm contacted by a studio who now has the rights to dub Excel, and they want to record those final 3 volumes, and they want, and not only do they want me as the role, but they want me to be able to do it in a way that I can actually finish it, because vocal health and longevity is very important. Which was not a thing back then. But yeah, it was the role was, it was already going to be a vocally taxing role. Not being given that ample rest to be able to repair such damage is, you got 2 little tissues. Their vocal cords, I've had them photographed and filmed many times by going to various voice actors. I mean, COVID really scared me. When I caught COVID, I was like, because it really got into my voice, and I was like, hey, am I okay? 2 little bitty tissues that slam together. They're already like these, it's a violent little action already. And then watching what happens to them when you are at those levels of the decibel of hell, it's a hard thing to maintain. So, yeah.
Well, back in the day, most of the people who set up these dubbing companies initially were not themselves artists or singers or voice actors. They were fans.
Right.
They were like the super fans of anime who were like, you know what? Nobody's dubbing these. Let's dub them. Hey, it's like our gang went up to their grandma's attic and got like a mixing board and a couple of microphones and started dubbing anime, and then it became a thing, right?
Right.
But those folks back then didn't really work in the industry. They hadn't already encountered these problems. So I suppose they had to run into them before they figured out how to navigate them.
Yeah, and also just like the different ways we recorded. So I was never analog. I was always digital, but the digital game of ADR has changed from the 90s to now. So you really, like I was mentioning before, like you're a flap short. You might be able to fix that on your own instead of the director taking out an entire word to remove that flap. Maybe you can just read it quicker, or you put a breath in there that you can kill, right? So there's that. And then let's say you're barely just too long, and the line needs to be a little bit shorter. Your engineer can compress you in a way that's not, the naked ear, if you will, is not going to be able to tell that you were compressed. because the technology now is great. Back then, you compress somebody, they start to sound really tinny and it sounds bad. Yes, people ask me if that was really me speaking that quickly at the end of those credits. Yes, because when they compressed me, it sounded unnatural. It just so happens I also sound unnatural when I speak that quickly. So people never believed me, but they didn't speed me up. I just spoke like a demon from hell. And the same way, like you're an engineer can maybe take your vocals and just stretch you out just a little bit. And it doesn't sound, if it sounds too bad, then your director is probably going to ask you to do it again, whatever, a little bit of work there to do. But, there are things they can do now that they could not do back then. So I would record every Excel Saga line 6 to 12 times. Here's another fun trivia fact. The first 4 minutes of the first episode of Excel Saga, the first 4 minutes took, I am not joking with you, I wrote this down in my Excel Saga journal. Yes, I had one at the time. I journaled about it because I didn't speak outside of the role. I had a notebook that I carried around. Whenever I would take a break in between volumes, I wouldn't speak for weeks, and then I would repair and go back in. Right? I'm not kidding you. I have friends that can tell you I did this in my little Excel Saga journal. It took 8 hours. I'm not kidding you. 8 hours for 4 minutes because they had me do the lines and the laughs and the screams over and over and over and over. And the first 4 minutes of episode 1 of Excel Saga, it's pretty important. First 4 minutes. You remember that show and what all goes on. That's the intro. Like if you can get through the first 4 minutes, I can't. My ears bleed. But if you can get through the first 4 minutes, then you're sold. But a lot of people turn it off. Listen, I get it. I understand it. Please do what you got to do. But it took 8 hours. And I was recording for Excel. There were 4-hour sessions. I also wouldn't do that to myself now. I pretty much try to do a 2-hour to 3-hour session max. Back then it was 4. But yeah, that's 2 full voice sessions at the time, 4 hours each, 8 hours to record 4 minutes. I am not kidding you. I wrote this down in my journal. It was crazy back then. I don't do that now. It's different now. It's easier now. And hopefully you have a director that you work with like David. David's an actor. David's an actor. David's a writer. David's a director. David understands, hey, I need a break. Oh, great. How long do you need? Or I'm sniffly today. Can we reschedule? Of course we can. David is an actor's director. He gets it. And that's who you really want to work with, especially if you're doing more of a vocally taxing role. David gets it. And so, yeah, there is that too, that might not have, as David was saying earlier, wasn't quite there in the earlier days.
To go back to Cutie Honey, as we mentioned at the top of this show, the people talking about this right now are 3 gay men and Cutie Honey herself. Honey is a very, I'm trying to think of a very diplomatic way of putting it. It's a very fan-servicey show. It is full of TNA, let's say, and I wonder, it has so many actresses in it playing these roles that have to say a lot of lines that are very strange, and sometimes I want to say, oh, you can tell a man wrote this. I wonder, how do you kind of, what is the appeal of playing Honey for you, and how do you kind of balance, you have to take this dialogue that someone sounds like they may have wrote with one hand, or that this concept may be a little off the wall. How do you kind of balance that with, I have to still play this android girl who loses her clothes as she loses power. I have to play her with some degree of pathos.
I know. Let's all think about that scene with Natsuko. Right? I keep wanting to say Natsuko.
Natsuko or Nat.
Or Nat. Yes, I called her Nat. That's right. There is a very interesting scene in Cutie Honey universe, and I'm like, what's going on here? Are they having a tickle party? And David's like, look, let's just dub it. Yeah. So you know what? I'm so desensitized at this point. Like, for goodness sake, what show have I not been in? Now there's like quite a few of them that aren't I would say sexualized. There's a lot of shows I've done that aren't with the fan service. But the ones that are, I still have a love for them too. I mean, I have a love for all of it. It's all art. It's all art to me. So I would say it doesn't really, nothing really bothers me. And there's always a way to get a performance that's going to fit within the confines of what the story is. Or hey, even if something totally doesn't make any sense at all, you got a good guide directing you. You got a good director guiding you. I could say that either way. You're gonna get what you need, and we're all gonna laugh about it. And it's anime at the end of the day. It is art at the end of the day, and I am performing, and that is my job. And I take it seriously and can laugh about it. So it doesn't, I would say like the eye opener for me was New Cutie Honey, because before New Cutie Honey back in 97, I had worked on Evangelion. I had 3 big lines. It was my first job ever at ADV Films.
And it took you 9 hours.
And it took me 19. I'm still not finished. They're still recording it. Beep, beep. I had done the adorable Ruin Explorers with the adorable Sam, hi, who's always screwing up every spell, and so my first real like show where, full on, very artful nudity, because the transitions in New Cutie Honey are beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, they are pretty. And I did talk to the director about it. The last 2 episodes of New Cutie Honey, they'd run out of, apparently, this is what the director said. The studio had run out of money. And you could really tell by the way the transitions were with the last 2 episodes, they just weren't as pretty. The frame rate wasn't as high. It just wasn't as pretty because they were gorgeous. And that was my first time seeing like, a full on, android girl, naked with the body and the clothes. And I'm like, this is just really, really pretty, and just as an actor, I can transform just like Cutie Honey, and we can figure it out. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, body humor is not unique to anime, certainly. Body humor has always been around. And I mean, we're back
and you're
to
saying body, not body. You're B-A-W, right?
B-A-W-D-Y, body.
Yes.
Which is, crass, often, sexual, like bathroom humor kind of, but, body comedy. It's, it's an old term. But like, that there's plenty of that in Shakespeare. So it's like, sometimes it's just, it serves the story, and that's the story we're telling. And thankfully, Sully, generally among actors, like actors aren't so easy to shock. Really, actors are usually in, their game. They're good for they're good for the laugh, or they're just happy to act. So, something like Cutie Honey, the humor in it is I don't know. It's a little like watching Animal House, or like, I guess the younger kids might think of American Pie, or like whatever the more modern version of it. It's like there's that humor is there to serve a purpose. It's there for us to laugh at ourselves, when it's done well, as it is in Cutie Honey. There are other examples of shows that I'm sure we can all name that it's TNA for the sake of TNA, and there is no reason for anything else to be there except to be a bridge from the T to the A. You know what I mean? And there's room for that entertainment too for people. It's not my jam, but I wouldn't bedevil anybody who enjoyed that sort of thing. But yeah, the body humor of Cutie Honey is no different than old French comedies, or Shakespeare, or even there's body humor even in the old cats. Your Aristophanes, your you know what I mean.
Oh, like the Commedia dell'arte, the Tartuffe and the Moliere with which one was the one who had his pants down all the time? Was it Punch? No, not Punch. I can't remember, but yeah, I studied Moliere a lot in school. I don't even remember which century of French theater this was. How embarrassing! My dates are shit. But like they were foul. I mean, they were nasty. And like what David's saying, it's been around. And then you mentioned Aristophanes. Yeah, some of the old Greek plays. I mean, they're like, yes, they're naughty. So yes, total agreement.
Because I'm very fascinated by this topic, and I just want to chime in a little bit now. And I know, like, I'm probably not the intended audience for Cutie Honey, as a gay man, but
you're the intended audience for the two I directed. So
I obviously I love Cutie Honey. I love the transformations. I mean, Jessica, you really like nailed it. I mean, they are very lovingly animated. Like, I remember somebody once said, they're like, at the end of the day, Cutie Honey was like made by just a bunch of people that just like boobs, and I think that's very accurate. But I don't think, like, I don't consider Cutie Honey a fan service series. I'm probably crazy by saying that, because I feel like there's more to it than just like the nudity and the sex appeal. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's not that horny, because I compare it to like Golden Boy. Like, I love Golden Boy, but Golden Boy is like a very like horny like sex comedy, but like nobody's like sniffing the toilet that like Honey just used or anything like that, and I feel like sometimes it's a little like unfair and kind of like frustrating. Like, I remember when Kill la Kill first came out, I was talking about with a bunch of a few coworkers and I were talking about anime, and I mentioned Cutie Honey. And back then, I think only New Cutie Honey was out. So nobody Cutie Honey was still like pretty like very niche back then. And
as yet undiscovered gem.
Yes. And one of my coworkers like scuffed at it. She was like, isn't that the show that like basically invented fan service? I would never watch that. And then she continued to talk to her friends about Kill la Kill, and I'm like, Kill la Kill probably has just as much boobage, if not more.
Well, you know what I think the difference is that being one of the earliest entries, and yes, one of the progenitors of the whole idea of fan service in anime, back then there weren't fan service shows. There were no shows that were just intended to be nothing but fan service. It was an element. It was an element of Cutie Honey, not its purpose. Since then, people are like, wow, they could do that in Cutie Honey. Well, I can do that in this. And like, their only idea is how many different ways can we show the girls changing outfits or whatever. But, Cutie Honey embraced the body. It embraced the body. It embraced the humor and the fan service and the shock of sexy content, but that was not its purpose. There were no shows at the time that had that purpose. Fan service.
There were no dubs at the time. I think.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Yeah. Right. And I don't see New Cutie Honey. I feel there's a pretty big difference between New Cutie Honey and Cutie Honey Universe, where like what David and I were saying earlier, where the animation is, it's a little bit different. It's definitely for a younger audience, I think. And there's just more heart and depth, emotionally speaking, in New Cutie Honey. So I don't feel that New Cutie Honey at all is a TNA show. I do not. And I don't feel that way about the other Cutie Honeys either. I feel like it's just like a side dish on top of what a deeper story is. But I do feel that if we're going to say that any of them are a little bit more TNA, it definitely wouldn't be New Cutie Honey. Because that one I just feel is just Go Nagai loving his big Amazon women and, embracing that. I mean, every female-esque person that Honey fought was just as big and voluptuous as she was. And I love that. I love that about his characters. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, the four Panther Claw generals are basically just drag queens. Like, they're so exaggerated and campy and weird.
I am waiting for the drag queen community to discover Cutie Honey.
Yes.
Because I think it's going to change the whole face of the of the movement. You know what I mean? The entire medium will change.
I mean, David, the first time we had you on, we were talking about your work dubbing LGBT anime, and Cutie Honey has, in various like ebbs and flows, it's always had a very lesbian, not so much subtext here, very much explicitly text in all the adaptations. Was that something that sort of drew you to dubbing or wanting to work with Cutie Honey specifically? Was kind of that potential for bringing that part of the story into the dub?
Well, I think, initially what happened was the reason I directed Cutie Honey Universe was because I was contract directing at Sentai Filmworks at the time. This was at the same time that I was working on like Love Stage and Bloom Into You and that stuff. And so it was a show that came along, and I was asked by the director of production then to direct that show because he felt that like it sort of aligned with my sense of humor. And when he described it to me, he's like, there's a lot of T and there's a lot of A. And I was like, well, are you sure I'm the guy for that, Joey? Because I don't know, there may be someone more qualified. But it was its sort of vibe and sense of humor. And yes, the presence of lesbian content that sort of, I think, caused him to think of me, think of putting that show in my lap in the first place. So it wasn't something I sought out. It was something that landed in my lap. And when I took I heard his description and skeptically took a look at some of the video and thought, okay, all right, I get the sense of humor here. And yes, I am definitely into this. Mm. The presence of that content, I mean, the show doesn't make a big deal out of it. And I think it would be a betrayal of it if I made a big deal out of it. So the presence of that content is it serves, I think, one of the greatest functions that queer themed content can serve in modern narrative, and particularly in anime, is to just be there and be an accepted element of the universe that show is taking place in. Mm-hmm. And to give it any more credence than that, I think is to sort of like it's to unmake a little of what makes that so special. And I don't encounter that very often. I remember that, the first time I got wind of the presence of queer content in anime at all was when I was working on, we were dubbing Akame ga Kill, and I played the character Bulat, who is gay, canonically gay. It's, it's talked about in the script. It's mentioned. This is Bulat, by the way, he's gay, but it was never his main contribution to the story. He was many other things before he was the gay one, right? He was a teacher, a mentor, a warrior, an outlaw. He was all these things just as much or more than he was the gay character. So I think the same is true in Cutie Honey. That element is there, and certainly I think there's a lesbian quality that's really present and sort of runs as an undercurrent through the entire Panther Claw organization. But I think that's really more about feminine power, like the feminine creature acknowledging its own sexual potential. It's not about. I don't think it's really about the queer content. I think it's more about the woman recognizing its, her own beauty and power and attractiveness. So I think the lesbian content just sort of is there to serve that. And I think if they wanted it to be a bigger deal, they'd have made it a bigger deal.
Speaking of queer, have we all heard David's performance as Katse in Gatchaman Crowds? Have you guys seen Gatchaman Crowds or Gatchaman?
I have. I have. I actually specifically looked it up because I found out about the character of OD, and I'm like, well, finally someone I can be. So yeah, I did watch Gotcha in Crowds when it. I don't think I watched it when it first came out, but I was watching it when there was a dub.
Yeah, Dave has got one of my favorite male performances of all time. I mean, Katse, he just goes off. You have got lilts and wilts and hills and valleys. Just wonderful. And they kind of changed Katse's character because I think Crowds is first and Inside is second. Do I have that backwards?
No, you're correct.
Yeah. Yeah, at Crowds, Katse was just a little bit of a different placed, and he just had, he had more lines and he was just a little bit of a different character. And they kind of quieted him a little bit in the second one, which I didn't love, but the story was different. But oh my God, in Crowds, your performance, I mean, seriously, people ask, oh, who, sometimes we get asked at conventions or in interviews, who are your favorite voice actors and who do you like? And I name off my few and they're like, well, who are your favorite performances? And I'm like, well, anything Lucy Christian touches is something that I'm going to obsess over because I think she's just freaking phenomenal.
She's so good.
She's got my heart, man. And I've known, Lucy and I we've been on stage together. I've known that girl for a long time. She is just a force. I love her work, stage, her voice. Yeah, she's great. Yeah, we're just anyone mentions Lucy's name and it's just
she's a dream. I'll tell you, I'm thinking of it as a director because like directing Lucy again, it's the virtue of someone with all that talent and all those years of experience.
Yes.
Like Lucy will surprise you. So Lucy always goes for a surprise, and not like a big reveal surprise. It's like she never approaches a character quite exactly how anyone can anticipate. Mm-hmm. And it's like down to the reads themselves, line by line. Like Lucy always picks an interesting approach, and she's just so good at the technical element of things. So a session with Lucy is just gonna fly by, and you're gonna have miles of usable tape. Not that we use tape, but
right. But you're right, and her also just. I love the sound of her voice. Like, yes, acting, yes. But I love her like normal voice. I just love Lucy's voice, because some people have great voices anyway, and some people don't really. They're just like a normal voice, but they're a fantastic voice actor. Lucy just, she's a wonderful person. First of all, we love her, but she just has this fantastic speaking voice, and then her acting is just off the chart. But now I'm thinking about Lucy. Is Lucy in that show? I can't remember if Lucy's in that show with us or not. I don't remember why I brought her. I think I was just talking about people that I love. So Lucy's always up there, but so is David. There's multiple accounts of me online talking about David's performance as Katse and Gotcha in Crowds and Insight. You're just so good. Like that is the role that does not quit giving gifts with your voice. I mean, you are just so good in that show. It is scary. And I also don't hear those kinds of roles where people can go off like that. Because again, it goes back to the confinement of the character. Like you're very much right. But for whatever reason, that role, like they just, I don't know. I think did the director ask you to be that fantastic? Or did you just decide like, hey, I'm fucking doing it?
No, the director was Kyle Jones. And like the experience that you're describing, like working with an ideal director, that's always my experience when I work with Kyle Jones, who's still directing at Sentai. Like Kyle is really great at letting you off the chain. He's great at guiding and not dictating. Just as you described. And the benefit of a role like Katse in a show like Gotcha Crowds is that he does not adhere to any rules. Like the rules that are established of the environment and the city of where the show is taking place, and like all those rules of place and time mean nothing to him. He is a creature without place or time. So like you can break any rule. I could do I think at one point I did a Sean Connery impression. There's crazy shit, and you could just swing for the fences and go completely off. And and occasionally Kyle would be like, that might be a bit too far. Let's try something a little different. But that's the director's job. My job is to swing for the fences, and the director's job is to set the fences.
Yeah. You really are so. I'm not kidding, you guys. I really talk about you a lot when people ask about I'm not. I want you to Google me with your like Jessica Calvello and David Wald. You'll find me talking about you in other instances when people ask about good acting, because like that you just kill that role.
Well, I'm gonna go Google that later. I could use the uplift.
I mean, I
could use the boost.
You're so good. Oh my God.
You're
it's
real
so
for the next 2 months.
I don't watch my own stuff really, because I'm like, I'm always so critical. Yeah. But I'll watch Gotcha Man for David Wald's performance as Katse. I will watch that shit. Listen, listeners, for this, you guys got to go check it out. You're not gonna be disappointed. It's like nothing you've ever heard before. Seriously, the end.
Bless you, darling. You're an angel.
Yeah.
I was going to say David's reel for the next like 2 months is just him sending YouTube videos where you're talking about him.
You probably could make a reel out of me talking about David, Lucy. I love Brittany Karbowski. She is heaven. Yes. Oh, I love her. She's so good. Ian Sinclair. Holy frick. These are all accomplished, experienced, amazing actors. Yes, they're voice actors, but first and foremost, anyone who I really respect, they are actors. And they know how to use their voice to act. They are not acting with their voice. I get very elitist about this. They're not acting with their voice. No, I'm sorry. I said it. Now I just said the thing backwards. They know how to act, and they know how to utilize their voice to act. You can take all the voice acting classes you want. Just go ahead, do it. But until you've had acting classes, you are not going to be able to use your instrument in the way that you are going to want to be able to use your instrument if you want to be a voice actor. I don't think voice acting... I don't like the term voice actor. I mean, yes, I'm a voice actor, but I'm an actor, and that is first and foremost. And this is getting off on you did not even ask me about this, and here I am on my soap pedestal.
Girl, you climb every mountain. Go out.
Listen, Dave is an actor, and that is why we get performances like Katse, and hopefully that is why you get performances like from me, like we're talking about the different variations of Cutie Honey and whatnot, because we're actors first, and so that I will literally live, breathe, die on that hill.
To go with a question I had about the cast is for Black Claw. Black Claw is the villain who is divided in half, black and white, and one half is a male half and one half is a female half. And only one actor, Kayleigh McKee, is listed as Black Claw. Did Kayleigh McKee do both voices? Because I thought it was two people watching it for the longest time. I was like, there's only one voice actor here, so either Kayleigh did both of them, or there's like an uncredited actor who did it as like a lark, that it's a secret or something.
Winona Ryder. No, it was. Yeah. Kayleigh did Black Claw, both halves, and it was absolutely lovely. We really did want to find a trans actor to do that. And it was, it was difficult. It was difficult to do, because a lot of the auditions we were getting for that were just a little too broad on either side of the spectrum, a little too cut and dry, a little too like 2D. But Kayleigh had a really lovely sort of depth and sort of a consistency between both halves of that role. And they're two sides of the same coin, and I think once again, not the point of the character, but an element of that character is sort of that male-female dichotomy, and that's something that anyone who lives outside the normal cis hetero community is going to understand on some level. So like, I certainly connect with that character who's a balance, like a literal yin yang balance between their male elements and their female elements. A trans person is going to get that. A non-binary person is going to get that. It's like that sort of that split between those two halves of a psyche, of a not a psyche, but of your persona. It's really just a metaphor for the conflict that exists in us all, whether it be moral or gender or religious or political or sexual or, your favorite color. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted that consistency in that performance. So we were definitely looking for an actor who could handle both halves of Black Claw, and Kayleigh absolutely fit the bill beautifully.
We have talked a lot about Jessica and the other actors, but we haven't talked about you, David, because you play Alphone in Universe, but here you're doing Jill's butler slash spoiler for everyone listening if you haven't watched this. But you do play quote unquote Dr. Kisaragi, and this is you also reprising that role from Universe. And did you always kind of have yourself in mind, or how did you get a role in the show you were directing at the same time?
Well, initially that happened in, of course, Cutie Honey Universe, and in a previous iteration of Cutie, I think it was New Cutie Honey, it was John Swayze who voiced the father.
Yeah.
But in Universe, I could have asked John Swayze to reprise that role. I probably could have asked him to double it. But knowing, I've known John for years since I started in this business. He's who got me started in this business. And so I know John real well. And I knew that Donbay was where John's heart needed to beat. So I cast him as Donbay in Universe. And Dr. Kisaragi in that iteration appeared very little. Again, at the time, things were a little less structured on the schedule than they are these days. Even, Cutie Honey Universe wasn't really dubbed even that long ago. But still, things were quite different. And so, you'd sometimes, like, if you'd run across something and you'd think, oh, that just needs an older male. That just needs a guy who doesn't sound like he's, 14. So I'll just do that. And then we don't have to worry about scheduling it and whatever. You know what I mean? So we would slot ourselves into roles like that often. You'll hear Kyle Jones appear in Kyle Jones shows doing like incidentals and stuff like that. I have a sort of it's sort of a secret desire of mine as a director, is that I do like to dip my toe into the cast somewhere. And I generally like that to be in sort of someone who's got a more narrative view of the show. Or in this case, someone who's got sort of a paternal element in the show. Because in fact, I play a paternal role in the production of the show. So it's a nice little mirror for me. It satisfies my own creative demons. And I was enjoying the opportunity to play Jess's dad. That was just a personal joy. But it was a very little consequence, really, in Cutie Honey Universe, because Kisaragi was in so little of it. And when Cutie Honey came back, again, Marissa, in concert with Discotek, went through and slotted all of the returning actors they wanted to use, and in fact, the returning director, myself. So that was all Sound Cadence Studios' effort to bring all the old school back in on this dub, and I was easy to access for them because I live where they have a headquarters studio. I have worked with them on many occasions. Like, our workflow is good, so I was an easy ask to direct Cutie Honey. And likewise, my reprising that role was something that was preordained before I had even, gotten involved.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like to do that. There are a lot of shows, like in both Given and Stranger by the Shore. I played Jesse Greeley's dad. That became a thing. In Love Stage, I played Ray, who was sort of a narrative view of the craziness of that family and those events. In He Trees You Made My Hero, I played the bartender, who's got a more narrative view than a bartender. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just a little trick I like to play sometimes.
Salvatore, I'm going to go back to you for a second. In all of the time we've been friends, I've known you as the Cutie Honey expert, and you've mentioned that Cutie Honey is the thing that got you into it. What do you think for you is the appeal of Cutie Honey specifically, but just the franchise overall? Like, what about it draws you to it, and what do you think makes it such a... It's still kind of a niche fandom here in the West, but it certainly has like a lot of really hardcore, like, people go to bat for it.
Well, New Cutie Honey was actually what got me into it, because back in the day that was all that there was. But I did see Cutie Honey shortly after, because there used to be this thing called the Anime Network, and it was like an on-demand anime service that ADV did, and that's how I was able to watch New Cutie Honey. And I saw the first episode. I was like, I love this. This is great. And that was in 2004. And that was around the time that Cutie Honey was coming out, and so everyone was like talking about that because it was Gainax, it was Go Nagai, Cutie Honey, so it was a big deal. And it was interesting watching both. I mean, it still is, because like I said, like each Cutie Honey adaptation is different, but most of them are kind of like have the same-ish storyline. New Cutie Honey is kind of the odd man out, just because like there isn't Panther Claw in New Cutie Honey. Like there's Panther Zora who shows up, but like it's mostly like these other one-off villains. Like even like in the other adaptations, like they're always after the system that's in Honey's body. The atmospheric element condenser called the I system in Cutie Honey. But in New Cutie Honey, it's more so like it's like Dolmek trying to like destroy the world or take over the world or whatever. I just went on a tangent and I just like blanked out.
I heard that happen.
We're talking about Cutie Honey, right?
Yes.
So Cutie Honey, I feel like at least as far as the U.S. fan base goes, I think that's the fan favorite. I think the fact that it is Gainax helps a lot. Like you have Imashi doing the designs, of course Anno. Everybody loves Evangelion. Like everybody loves Anno. And we discussed this earlier before we got on the chat, is that each episode has its own director. And so it has like each episode has its very distinct style. It almost feels like a different show with each episode.
Yeah.
The first episode is very like wacky and high paced and very, very Gainaxy. Like, it kind of reminds me of like the more comedic parts of Evangelion, the more comedic parts of his or her circumstances. The second episode is much more downbeat. Like, you have a lot more of the exploring Natsuko and Honey, their differences, their relationship. But then you also have a lot of Go Nagai-isms, I actually didn't realize this, or I didn't like connect the dots when I was doing the liner notes, but a big aspect of that second episode is definitely inspired by the Devilman manga, because you have this witch hunt where they're trying to find all these women because they think that one of them can be Honey. That's very much like in the manga, where they're like targeting like people who they think are different or outsiders because they might be demons. And then the third episode is basically just Evangelion.
Yeah.
Explosions. In fact, like 2 side characters from Evangelion show up randomly. It was I think it was a Navy officer or something. Plus there's fan service, going back to what we were talking about earlier. People love fan service, or some people.
It's the whole package.
It is. It's definitely, there's something for everybody, but that's the one when I tell people, like when I go to cons and stuff and I'm like, oh, I love Cutie Honey, everyone always says, oh, I love Cutie Honey. That's always like the one. Even before it was officially licensed in the US, people, I would usually see the Cutie Honey cosplayers, or I would see people say, like, oh, I love the Cutie Honey version. And, and even going back to Discotek, that was the one that they really wanted to bring over. And I mean, I understand why. So... Also, I will say this, adding on to the whole complete package thing, it's one of the first or few adaptations that actually has a conclusion, because New Cutie Honey famously just ended, didn't have an ending. For those of you who, spoilers for a 50-year-old series, for those of you who haven't seen the original Cutie Honey series, she never fights Panther Zora. It ends after she defeats Sister Jill, and it's left open-ended. And other versions kind of have this like narrative that like Panther Claw is always going to be around. Like even if she does defeat them, they're going to come back. But Re Cutie Honey was like the first where it's pretty much like, okay, it's like we're like done here. We have a complete story. And it's only 3 episodes. I mean, they're longer episodes, but I think that like works well. I mean, even recently, because I've been very like excited about Re Cutie Honey coming out, you know, because this is the first time, even though I wasn't a huge part of the dub, this is like my first time being involved in some capacity with the dubbing process. And a friend of mine, you know, we popped in the Blu-ray and we watched the entire thing, you know, in a day.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like a big part of the appeal, and it's you know, it's good stuff. It's there's a lot of heart put into it. I mean, there's so many like layers to it. Like, I mean, for those of you at home who have the Blu-ray, if you have not watched the commentary with the directors and the writers, please do, because I mean, they talk about so many things that make me appreciate the show even more. For example, there's in episode 2, there's that infamous scene where Honey kind of like overpowers and she turns into like a marble statue, and Natsuko heats her up with her bodily warmth. I did not know this until like after the until while we were working on it. But that scene was inspired by the infamous like fountain scene in the manga and which also shows up in Cutie Honey universe, where Honey disguises herself as a statue, and Danbei and Junpei unknowingly heal her up. It's remarkable that they took such a low point from the manga, like such a proud moment, and they made it into something really deep and meaningful. Like I was like, when I read that in the commentary translation, I was like, holy shit. I was like, that's really, I mean, that takes a lot of artistic like talent and just like genius to do that, you know? Because I mean, whenever I reread the manga, I always like to skip that part. Whenever I get to Universe, I like to skip that part. And they made something really beautiful with it.
I do think it's interesting that one of the big selling points of Re Cutie Honey is that it does have an ending compared to the other versions of the character.
Mm-hmm. Wait. I might have misheard. So I know New Cutie Honey doesn't have an ending. This Cutie Honey universe has an ending, doesn't it?
It does. I guess.
Okay.
Re Cutie Honey technically came out beforehand, but the dub for universe predates Re Cutie. It's all one big mess. But yes,
yeah.
I mean, who knows what happened to Panther Zora, but she shows up in 10 seconds, so I guess it doesn't matter. But yes, it has a complete ending.
It really did suck though that New Cutie Honey just ended the way it did, and I was like, I remember my 1997-year-old self. I was like, how does Go Nagai's studio run out of money? And I don't think it was like Go Nagai's studio. I don't think we really had like a deep conversation about it. But I was like, how did that happen? Like, this is such a great show. The last 2 episodes, the story is fine, but you can tell such a difference in the animation. Like I said, like those magical sequences where Honey is transitioning, they're just not there because we have been spoiled by what they were prior. And then, the director was like, they just ran out of money. And I was like, that's a thing. And then now after, so many years of us being in the industry, David, like how many times do we hear about like the studio's bought by someone else, the story totally changes, or, the animation, the first season's animated by one company, then the second season's animated by a different company. And so that's like, I didn't realize how normal that was back then. Cause I was just kind of heartbroken. I was like, well, where's the rest of it? And he's like, wasn't finished. And I was like, that's it. That's it. Okay.
Well,
New Cutie Honey was a victim, like so many other OVAs at the time, of just the entire Japanese economy tanking.
Yeah.
Well, the kicker is that it was supposed to only be 4 episodes, and if you watch those 4 episodes, they work as like a neat little story. But the sales were so good and it was so popular, they were going to do 12 episodes. But then I think it was the production company that went under. Then it got cut down to 8, and then unfortunately they didn't have a time to like really like do anything with it. So episode 8 is just kind of like a regular episode, you know, obviously like kind of unfinished in places. They did do an audio drama for episode 9, which is on the Discotek Blu-ray, which
that's great.
It feels more final still, like doesn't really, it actually raises more questions than it raises more questions than gives us answers, but it's sweet. It's Christmas themed. You know, they revisit like Honey's past, like, you know, her father's passing, Natsuko. Definitely recommend, you know, giving it a listen. And it's a shame they didn't animate it because, you know, there's like a very cute scene where Honey transforms into a Santa Honey. So.
Oh my God! We need a Santa Honey. Oh.
Great. We need a Honey Christmas special. I mean, you know,
can you imagine Donbei as like as one of the elves? A little shit. A little pervert. That little shit.
I imagine Donbei as like one of the reindeer who's not Rudolph. You know, just like bitter.
Trying to look up everyone's tinsel, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, these like sort of things happen in Western animation as well. I mean, I remember, you know, again, old man. So I was growing up like watching Saturday morning cartoons in the late 70s. And I was there for the Super Friends. That's what I was there for. And everything else that happened on either side of the Super Friends, I may or may not see on my way into or out of that episode of the Super Friends. That was where my heart beat. But like, you know, it changed. It was the Super Friends, and then it was Challenge of the Super Friends or something, and they changed characters, and like, you know, and eventually it just stopped because they just stopped making it. So it's not an anomaly. You know, sometimes. You know, and I'm not sure how things work over like structurally over in Japanese studios, but you know, a studio can only manage so much. So maybe, you know, Go Nagai, his attention got diverted to another project, and like there really wasn't time on the calendar to do. You know what I mean? There's so many things that can dictate. You know, particularly over here, thanks to things like Nielsen ratings and whatnot, audience response will play a huge factor in whether or not a thing continues, or like, you know, the licensing can become an issue, particularly if you're making a cartoon about a comic book or like a toy line or things like that. Things can get nutty, and particularly in the world of OVAs. Over in Japan, I know that those like sort of exist in their own sphere, and licensing an OVA can be very challenging, as you were talking about earlier, Salvatore. Like you know, like who do we even ask for this license? Because it you know, you can have a popular show and do a 12 episode series of an anime over in Japan, and then like there's an OVA, but in Japan that OVA only came included with an issue of the manga, and so it's actually the manga company, not the studio that animated the thing, that has like a partial ownership over that. So it just gets crazy. Licensing gets nutty, schedules get nutty, audience interest can get very fickle. So like there are all kinds of reasons for titles to sort of grind to a halt or not continue or change ownership or you know.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I think in a way the fact that New Cutie Honey doesn't have like a proper ending is part of the charm for me. This is a very weird tangent, but my boyfriend introduced me to Twin Peaks, and that eventually did get like a finishing, but like the first 2 seasons it just ends on a huge cliffhanger, and I was like, I'm satisfied. I'm good with the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I think the cliffhanger is like, it knows it knows it has more to say, but sometimes it doesn't feel like telling you the rest of it. So maybe I've seen so many things that just had been in production limbo that I'm just very open to. Yeah, they ran out of money, or this is just you know, all the characters in a dark room, and that's why there's no animation. It's just voices. You know, I'm
well.
Yeah.
And as you know, like that's absolutely true. Sometimes things don't come to a tidy conclusion because it's a choice. You know, there's a Ernest Hemingway. He had this used to talk about that a story is an iceberg, and the story you read is only the tip of the iceberg, and the story you don't read, all the things that aren't written and aren't said and aren't concluded and wrapped up, those are the bulk of the iceberg living under the water. You know what I mean? So it could easily be a choice.
Did Ernest Hemingway coin the term "the tip of the iceberg"? Is that from him?
I don't know that he did, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Yeah,
I've never looked that up.
Yeah, I was like, hey, it's interesting. Anyway.
Sorry, because this was like a kind of a big question I did want to ask, and it kind of goes in line with like cancellation and all that. Now, in 1999, I believe it was, ADV did announce that they had licensed a CGI Cutie Honey series that was in production. I forgot the director that was attached to it. I think it was like the guy who did Vampire D or some vampire show. They announced it. They said it was going to be in CGI. Nothing ever came of it. When Cutie Honey was about to come out, some people assumed it was it. I was at some convention as a teen. I think it was like Anime Boston or something, and I spoke with, is it Matt Greenfield? Was he the guy at ADV?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the director of New Cutie Honey.
Okay, that's all right. I wasn't completely sure about the name, but I knew it was him. And I had asked him about it. I said, is Cutie Honey this project that was announced like years ago? And he said, no, it was, that project was supposed to be CGI. It got canceled, and he didn't really elaborate on it. Now, this is like a very like scarce piece of like lost media. I don't even know if I said the word right, but it's like it's a big legend. There's not much known about it. There's no official images have been released. Did you know anything about that, Jessica? Like, was there talks?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. A CGI. I mean, what is anime if it's not CGI? So what am I not understanding?
But like 3D, like if you've ever seen like Reboot or something, because I mean this is 1999.
Really?
So 3D.
I have never heard of this before, and if I had and I wasn't allowed to say something, my response would be, I can't talk about it, right? Because I wouldn't want to lie to you. But I literally have never heard of anything like that before, and I am also curious as to what happened there.
Yeah, I'm like, because I mean, there's really no information about it. I know the director, he's on Twitter, the Japanese director, and he did talk about it like once, like years ago, and I think he just said like, I don't know why it got canceled, and he said that images were officially released like publicly, but I haven't found anything. Trust me, I find all the Cutie Honey shit. So
if anyone could find something lost on the internet regarding Cutie Honey, I bet it would be you.
Yeah, like, so it's, I don't know, and I always forget about it, and it was funny because as we were talking, I was like, oh my god, maybe she would know something, but...
No. Wow, I'm interested. I'm gonna call Sentai. No, I'm not. That sounds cool, though. I'm sad it didn't happen, but maybe someday it will. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's one of many canceled Honey projects, but I just... there's so much mystery around it that I'm like, I need to know more,
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, keep sleuthing, my friend. You never know.
Will do.
Well, I want to thank both Jessica and David for being on the show, and Salvatore for lending his honey expertise. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn by saying that this was a huge honor, and also I was incredibly nervous. I spent the last week going, oh god, I'm talking to Cutie Honey. I don't know what to do.
No, listen, I have two things I have to ask though before we end, but I want to say thank you for having me. And David, thank you so much for reaching out. David actually was like, hey, these are people I know. Would you be interested? And I was like, of course I'm interested, especially if you're going to be there. Hell yeah. Anything Cutie Honey related, I'm interested.
got to get Cutie Honey in on the scene. I mean, how are we going to do an interview about Cutie Honey without Cutie?
I mean, girl. So, okay. Also, speaking of gay again. I don't know if you guys know this person. His name is Jonathan Castleman.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, because he was a subtitler at Crunchyroll for a long time. And I just have to give a shout out to him. I have commissioned him for all of my Cutie Honey artwork that I do. That we all have merch for our tables at conventions. And he has made me 3 honey prints, and one of them is a traditional. I'm not even like trying to sell myself right now. I'm talking about him. Like, he did a traditional new Cutie Honey, and it was red-haired version Cutie Honey and blonde Cutie Honey, and then he did the style in the Cutie Honey universe style, and it was the same. It was the redhead and the blonde. And then most recently, just last year, and these are so pretty, he did a new Cutie Honey transition poster, and I got it printed on this prismatic. It's called prismatic. It's their Prisma paper. I use cat prints. It's an 11 by 17. Say again.
Like the holographic paper.
Thank you. Holographic Yeah, I think they call it prismatic, but yes, it's holographic paper at an 11 by 17. He is such an amazing artist, and he is so good with capturing old school different art styles. He also did a Dirty Pair one for me. Again, just like it looks like it is from the show. So I don't have his I didn't want to like click on the PC while we're all talking. That's so obnoxious because I was trying to find his Twitter to put in our chat. I think it's Karumi something.
Karumi Lover.
Karumi Lover. And he is so gay, and he loves Cutie Honey. He has got multiple figures and artwork, and his Twitter is filled with the most wonderful Cutie Honey and other stuff too. I think he's got some Gunsmith cats, and like I said, he also loves Dirty Pair. And Dirty Pair, yeah, that's like kind of in line with like you had asked a question at the beginning, Sully, about the differences or someone did. It's all blurred together with my ADHD brain, but the differences between like, the older Cutie Honey and the newer Cutie Honey and the voice acting, whatnot. And Dirty Pair was kind of the same thing, by the way. Like, we recorded Dirty Pair. I play Yuri. My girl Pam Lauer plays Kay, and we recorded that. Again, in the 90s and early 2000s. And then the role was taken over from someone else took over Yuri when I moved away. But then just now we concluded the recording of the Dirty Pair TV series. And a big concern was like, okay, 20 years later, our voices are a little bit different, they are. And how are we going to do this? And I said, also, I have 20 years now of more experience of like everything being anime all the time, and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't want to do that because we didn't do like our voice acting was different back then. And this is not a dissertation or commentary on what's better and what's not better. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it was some of the voice acting in the dubs back in the day. It was just not as big as it is now. I don't know another way to say it. And it's not better or worse. It's just different. And I said, I don't want Yuri to all of a sudden have this anime voice. It's Yuri, Yuri is Yuri. And this is a very 1980s dub. And I was so grateful, just like David Wald and a lot of other directors I've worked with, Joe DeGiorgi, who's the director of this Dirty Pair series. And I've worked with I've worked with Joe on a lot of titles. Joe recorded Comic Party. Yeah.
Shout out to Joey D.
Shout out to our friend Joe DeGiorgi. He's amazing. Headline Studios is the name of his studio. Comic Party. KO Beast. Speaking of dubs with bloopers on them, KO Beast has the most hilarious bloopers on them. They're so ridiculous. Kari Kano, his and her circumstances. Boogie Pop Phantom was a dub that hardly anyone's heard of. It got overshadowed by Lane, and Lane is one of my favorite shows of all time, dub and sub. So I've done a lot of work with Joe, and so Joe was directing the TV series of the Dirty Pair, which we ran the Kickstarter for. Not we, sorry, I have no part of that. Nozomi, and then another company took it over, but. I had some conversations. I said, before we take this on, you need to understand, I am not looking to change the voice. I mean, yes, it's 20 years later. There's some age there. There's some texture there that I didn't have before. but I'm going to try to nail the voice role as I'm honoring this. This isn't me wanting to like, this is not a reboot. This is literally like this is old shit, man. And and Pam, my friend Pam, who plays Kay, she hadn't voice acted in 20 years. And so we got her, she jokes, you got me out of retirement for this, but she loved it, and she's back doing Kay. And we wanted it to be as close to the original as possible. We got Jason Douglas to come back and do Ghoulie. We got Brett Weaver to come back and do that freaking weird ass alien cat. What's the cat? Moogie. Moogie. Yes. So that goes into, and I know I'm talking about another show, and this is about Cutie Honey, and I'm not trying to like keep us here, but it's the same thing. It's what we're talking about. I'm not interested in like, I'm interested in the roles that I take on to make sure that they are effective within what the show is. And it's really everything that we've been talking about this whole time. And David is saying it way better than I am, because I just my brain, but that's what's really important to me. And I just wanted to say that because it's adjacent, right? Because it's a totally different show, but it is that same honor system. And all of us felt that way. Jason felt that way. Brett felt that way. It's like, this is like, we did these roles back in, 99, 2000. We want that back. And so I was really grateful that, like David, Joe is like, listen, I wasn't, I didn't work on this show back then. What do you want to do? And I was like, yeah, ask me what I want to do. Yeah, music to my ears. So, and then I have a question for Salvatore.
Yes.
This is okay. I hope we're still going to be friends after I ask you this question.
Uh-oh.
There is such controversy over this topic, and I am through with it. I am done with the controversy. Stop it. Listen, there's no controversy. There's only one real answer. Okay? Cutie Honey. People argue over whether Cutie Honey is an android or a magical girl. I will die on this hill. What is your response, Salvatore? No pressure.
She is both.
Thank you. Yeah, but she's a little bit more android though. Like I get the magical transformations. I understand that, but at Honey's core, she is an android.
Yes, she is an android. Now, if you want to get technical, she isn't an android. I'm gonna answer this as condensed as possible. She is not an android in every single version. In Cutie Honey Flash,
no, I'm talking about new Cutie Honey. I'm so sorry.
New Cutie Honey, 100% android. She is an android in everything except for Flash. But in Flash, she's an artificial human. So she's a test tube baby, essentially. But in every version, her powers come from science. It comes from the system in her body.
Yes.
So she can be an android and a magical girl. Now, if you go through each series, it's different. The 70 series, she's an android, doesn't have magical powers, but she is considered a magical girl. At least at one point she was. New Cutie Honey, I don't consider it a magical girl series, but Cutie Honey as a whole is a character, magical girl, but she is an android. So yes. I both. So I hope we can still be I adore you.
Can't it just be magical android?
I mean, kind of, but she was.
Listen, I was having this ridiculous argument a couple of days ago with a dear friend of mine, who was arguing to me that Star Wars is not science fiction; it's fantasy. And I was like, no, Star Wars is sci-fi fantasy.
Right.
We don't have to pick.
But also, I mean, science and magic, and because like Panther Claw, for example, their agents, other than Sister Jill and Panther Zora in most versions, the agents are androids, but they also, like Sister Jill and Panther Zora, use magic and science. Like we can have both.
Yes, of course. Of course, it can be all things.
I have seen people rage wars over like, no, Honey's an android. No, Honey's a magical girl. Because I guess, and this again for Salvatore, like. New Cutie Honey came before Sailor Moon, so is there talk of like Sailor Moon taking after Honey, like the magical girl transformations? Like, was Honey the first, or did Sailor Moon come before Honey?
Cutie Honey predates Sailor Moon by 20 years, like the original Cutie Honey. Because Cutie Honey came out in 1973. Now, Cutie Honey, again, trying to condense this as best as I can. Cutie Honey wasn't the first transforming magical girl. There's other transformations, like there are other magical girls that had transformations, but Cutie Honey kind of started that whole, like, definitely the first, like, really, like, new transformation. Like, the clothes come off and then new clothes come back on. Like, Honey definitely originated that. That like, kind of, like, yeah, obviously, like, sexy, you know, because Miki Momo also has a similar one, but Miki Momo not as, like, sexually charged. Because, like, we didn't get into this, but Cutie Honey was originally supposed to be a show for girls, and then it became a boy show. And when they made the transition, Go Nagai was like, okay, well, let her get naked when she transforms, because then boys will watch.
Right.
That's, you know, that's how that started. And
He knew his audience.
Yeah.
Sailor Moon's transformation definitely inspired by Cutie Honey, but also there are other inspirations like Miki Momo. But I think Cutie Honey is, like, the more, like, you know, because the transformations in Sailor Moon aren't as fan servicey. Like, they're not, like, as, like, I still view them as, like, kind of, like, sexual, but, like, not as, like in your face, I guess. Like, their silhouettes, like, you know, definitely for, like, a younger, you know, female, like, they're graceful, you know. And but then Cutie Honey's is also graceful, but they're just obviously, like, boobs. I don't know. It's
I think part of the thing of it too is because Honey is so, like, sexual, fan servicey, whatever you want to call it, that people want to draw kind of like a hard line around it and say, no, this was never a part of it. It's not weird. It's not for perverts. And I think that might be, like, some of that frustration. I think people also just have this weird thing where they always want to find the first of a thing and not be like, well, art is always kind of talking with other art, and looking for the first magical girl is kind of, you know, you're going to dig until you hit the center of the earth and go out to the other side. Like, there's always going to be something beforehand, because, you know, Cutie Honey kind of is inspired by a lot of live action superhero shows in the 70s in Japan, and, like, even the first magical girl was kind of Samantha Stevens, because Bewitched was so huge in Japan. So, like,
well, I think and just a little bit before that was the Pharaoh Hatshepsut.
Yeah.
What?
In ancient Egypt.
Oh.
Hatshepsut. A female pharaoh predates Cleopatra. And every ceremony, they had to put on the gowns and the whatnot. There's your magical girl transformation. The origin of the magical girl. Ancient Egypt. Just like everything else.
I love it. I love it.
Female caveman who put on a different dress.
Right.
Can I ask one last question? It's a short one. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but
okay.
I just want to ask for Jessica and David. Now, most of Cutie Honey, or at least the animated versions of Cutie Honey, have been brought over. The original Cutie Honey and Cutie Honey Flash have not been dubbed. Flash has not been officially licensed in the U.S. Now, if a miracle happens and there is an opportunity to dub Cutie Honey and Cutie Honey Flash, will you guys come back?
If we're allowed to, hell yeah.
Okay.
All they got to do is dial my number, baby.
Yeah. And then David has to dial my number, and then yeah. See, I thought that was my question earlier. I thought it was the Cutie Honey Flashes that had been dubbed, but no.
No, Cutie Honey Flash hasn't even been released officially in the U.S., which is a crime. It's an absolute sin. It's the more Sailor Moon version, which isn't really fair to say, because only visually it's more like Sailor Moon. Like, a lot of the same staff worked on it, but it's still, like, pretty intense. Like, there's still the violence, there's still the nudity. It's very, very good. It's I think it's 39 episodes, and there's a movie. But it's absolutely fantastic. She has an evil twin sister in it. That's fantastic. It's I keep on lobbying for it. I'm praying to God that someone will eventually bring it. And I would love it to be dubbed, and I would love you guys to, you know, be in charge of it.
Listen, any chance I have to be put into a studio with David Wald, say less.
Girl. I think it might all be on hold because they're like, you know, maybe they're trying currently at Disney right now to figure out how to incorporate Cutie Honey into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How does that work? You know?
I wish.
So it may just all be tied up in, like, movie stuff. But, you know,
we really won't get to dub
it. Or maybe we'll have to.
Yeah.
Maybe the world will insist. But yeah, like, how about a new, like, A new Cutie Honey movie. That would be fun.
Yeah.
The Cutie Honey cinematic universe. I would tune in for that.
I would.
The time has come.
I love it.
You know, because Cutie Honey Universe was the last one. That was like what, like 5-6 years ago? It was a while ago.
Yeah. 18, right? 2018. Yeah.
Was it 2018? And then Re was 2 years ago, David?
When we dubbed it? Oh, we dubbed it. Yeah, it was a 2 years or less. But
yeah 2022
came out way before. Yeah.
Wait, has the dub been released yet?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
It's on hard disk.
I mean, what is time?
Available at your local Blu-ray retailer.
Love it. Well, this was super fun. Thanks for letting me say those last things and then ask my very controversial question. I'm glad we all agree.
Thank you both for being on, and you, Salvatore, but you're my friend, so you kind of have to.
This has been wonderful. I was very starstruck, so I apologize if I was silent a lot. I was I was playing it cool, and then I think Jessica, once you joined and you started talking, I was like, holy shit! I was I kind of melted in my seat. So.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor to have been a part of this, and obviously David and I are good friends, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Sully and Salvatore. This was really fun.
Who is this woman?
What'd you say?
I said, who is this woman?
Who is this?
This stranger.
I don't know you. Get off my Skype.
Hey folks, Editor Austin here, chiming in at the very last minute to give this episode a proper outro since I wanted to get it out before I go out of town for a week. For some reason the audio cuts out at the very end, but the conversation was pretty much wrapped up anyway. A massive thank you to Sully for putting this episode together, not to mention our incredible special guests talking about the Warrior of Love and her fun adventures. If you'd like to check out Jessica, David, and Salvatore's other work, check the show notes for links to where you can do so. If you enjoyed this episode of Third Impact Anime, please consider giving us a rating or review on the podcasting platform of your choice, or simply by sharing the show with a friend. Anything helps. You can find our back catalog of episodes on our website, thirdimpactanime.com, and you can follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram for the latest updates. Thanks again for listening, and is your atmospheric element condenser running? Well, you better go catch it!